If you're a parent or work with children, this video can change how you understand the real impact of children's entertainment. Stay with me, because what we're going to discover today could be key to the future well-being of the children you love most. Hi, I'm Brené Brown, and today we're going to talk about something that may be profoundly affecting your children's emotional and psychological development without you realizing it. During my years of experience, I've observed a concerning pattern. Children are increasingly anxious, aggressive, and unable to manage their emotions. And do you know what many of these cases have in common? The content they consume daily. Today we're going to analyze how certain apparently innocent cartoons are programming our little ones' brains in ways we never imagined. I'm going to tell you about 3 real cases that will make you completely rethink what you allow your children to watch. And at the end, I'll give you practical tools to protect their neurological and emotional development. Let's start by understanding what happens in a child's brain when they consume audiovisual content. The childhood nervous system is in full development, especially areas related to attention, emotional self-regulation, and concentration capacity. I remember perfectly the case of Sophia, a 6-year-old girl who came to me with what her parents described as impossible behavior. She couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes, had inexplicable episodes of aggression, and suffered constant nightmares. When we dug deeper into her routines, we discovered she spent more than 4 hours daily watching cartoons characterized by extremely rapid scene changes, saturated colors, and constant auditory stimulation. The problem with these hyper-stimulating cartoons is that they generate what we call stimulus addiction. The child's brain becomes accustomed to needing increasingly higher levels of stimulation to feel satisfied. This means everyday activities like reading a book, playing quietly, or maintaining a conversation become boring because they don't provide the dopamine rush the brain has become accustomed to. Problematic cartoons usually share specific characteristics: scene changes every 2 or 3 seconds, strident music without pauses, characters constantly screaming, and continuous conflict situations without constructive resolution. These elements create overactivation of the child's alert system, keeping them in a state of hypervigilance that is completely unnatural for their development. From a neuroscientific perspective, we're talking about an alteration in the production of key neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine, responsible for the sensation of reward and pleasure, fires artificially and constantly during these programs. The result is that the child develops tolerance that requires increasingly intense stimuli to experience satisfaction. But here comes the most concerning part. This neurochemical alteration isn't limited to television viewing time. It extends to the child's entire life. I've observed how children regularly exposed to this type of content develop difficulties enjoying activities that require sustained concentration, like studying, listening to explanations in class, or even sleeping without external stimuli. Before continuing, if this information is proving useful and you believe it can help other parents protect their children's development, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Sharing this knowledge is fundamental for creating collective awareness about something affecting millions of children. Your like and subscription help me reach more families who need this information. Now let's talk about something that deeply concerns me as a professional: how certain cartoons are teaching our children dysfunctional emotional patterns that later manifest in their relationships and behaviors. Take the case of Alejandro, an 8-year-old boy who developed what his parents described as impossible to control tantrums. During our sessions, we discovered his favorite program constantly presented characters who solved conflicts through screaming, emotional manipulation, or fun violence. The subliminal message Alejandro had internalized was simple: when you don't get what you want, the appropriate response is to escalate emotional intensity until others give in. This brings us to a fundamental concept. Children learn more through modeling than direct instruction. If a cartoon character they admire solves problems by screaming, lying, or being cruel to others, they're learning these are valid and effective strategies. The child's brain doesn't distinguish between fiction and reality the same way an adult's does. For them, what they see repeatedly becomes a map of how the world works. Problematic cartoons usually present several recurring toxic patterns. First, the normalization of cruelty as humor. Characters who hurt each other, humiliate or betray each other, but everything presented as funny. This teaches children that hurting others can be entertaining and socially acceptable. Second, presenting intense emotions as the only valid form of expression. Characters who only communicate by screaming, crying dramatically, or having anger episodes. Children exposed to these patterns learn that regulated emotions and calm communication are boring or less effective. Third, the absence of real consequences for destructive behaviors. In many of these cartoons, characters can be cruel, irresponsible, or destructive in one episode, and in the next, everything is reset without them having learned anything or faced natural consequences for their actions. A particularly concerning aspect is how these cartoons may be programming dysfunctional relationship patterns. I've seen children develop drama dynamics in their friendships, creating artificial conflicts because they've learned that interesting relationships always involve tension, competition, or betrayal. I remember the case of Camilla, a 7-year-old girl who began emotionally manipulating her parents using techniques she'd seen in her favorite cartoon. When she didn't get what she wanted, she adopted her preferred character's victim personality, complete with dramatic tears and monologues about how unfair life was. Her parents, without realizing it, were reinforcing this pattern by giving in to these emotional performances. The long-term impact of this emotional programming is significant. We're seeing a generation of children reaching adolescence without tools for healthy emotional regulation, with unrealistic expectations about how relationships should function, and with very low tolerance for frustration and boredom. From my perspective, what I find most alarming is how these patterns are consolidating during the most critical period of neurological development. Between ages 3 and 10, the brain is forming neural connections that will determine emotional response patterns for life. We now come to one of the most devastating effects I'm observing in my practice, the systematic destruction of sustained attention capacity in children. And I want to be very clear about this because this isn't an exaggeration. We're talking about real measurable neurological change. The human brain evolved to alternate between periods of sustained attention and rest. However, problematic modern cartoons have created a pattern of constant stimulation that is literally restructuring our children's neural architecture. Let me tell you about Diego, a 9-year-old boy who came to me because his teachers were concerned about his inability to concentrate for more than 2 minutes on any task. His parents described him as an intelligent child who seemed constantly lost, as if his mind was always elsewhere. When we analyzed his media consumption patterns, we discovered his brain had been literally trained to expect a stimulus change every few seconds. The cartoons he watched changed scene, perspective, character, or action every 2 or 3 seconds. His brain had learned that maintaining attention on something longer wasn't normal. This brings us to a crucial concept: neuroplasticity. The child's brain is extraordinarily plastic, meaning it molds according to stimulation patterns it regularly receives. If a child is consistently exposed to content requiring only superficial, changing attention, their brain will develop neural networks optimized for that type of processing. The problem is, these same neural networks are exactly the opposite of what's needed for deep academic learning, genuine creativity, complex problem-solving, and developing meaningful relationships. All these activities require what neuroscientists call sustained attention, the ability to maintain focus on one thing for prolonged periods. I've observed that children affected by this pattern develop what I call fragmented attention syndrome. They can't read more than a few paragraphs without feeling compulsive need to seek another stimulus. They can't listen to a complete explanation without their mind disconnecting. They can't enjoy games requiring patience or contemplation. But here comes something even more concerning: the loss of capacity for productive boredom. Boredom isn't the enemy of child development, it's one of its best allies. When a child becomes bored healthily, their brain enters what we call the default neural network, a state fundamental for creativity, introspection, and learning consolidation. Children overstimulated by problematic cartoons lose access to this crucial neurological state. Instead of boredom leading them to create, imagine, or reflect, it generates anxiety and compulsive need to seek more external stimulation. The academic impact is devastating. Teachers across the country report classrooms full of children who physically cannot maintain attention during a traditional class. It's not that they don't want to, it's that neurologically they no longer can. Their brains have been restructured to function in dispersed, superficial attention mode. I particularly remember Anna's case, a brilliant 8-year-old who had begun having nightmares about not being able to stop her brain. She described the sensation as having many televisions turned on in her head simultaneously. This is a perfect description of what happens when the child's brain has been overstimulated to the point of losing its natural regulation capacity. The most tragic part is we're robbing our children of one of humanity's most profound experiences: the capacity to be present, mindfulness, contemplation, deep appreciation of beauty, genuine connection with other human beings. All these experiences require the ability to sustain attention calmly and focused. After presenting this potentially overwhelming panorama, I want to offer you hope and practical tools. The neuroplasticity that allows this damage to occur also means it can be reversed. I've seen extraordinary transformations in children whose parents implemented conscious, informed changes. First, let's talk about what to look for in healthy audiovisual content for children. Cartoons supporting healthy neurological development have specific characteristics: unhurried pace with sufficient time for the child to process each scene, smooth transitions between sequences, characters modeling constructive conflict resolution, and periods of silence or calming music allowing the brain to rest. Excellent examples include productions incorporating nature elements, narratives teaching patience and perseverance, and characters facing real but age-appropriate challenges. Ideal content doesn't just avoid overstimulation, it actively teaches healthy emotional and social skills. But let's be realistic about the transition process. If your child is already accustomed to hyperstimulating content, abrupt change can generate resistance and what seem like withdrawal symptoms. I've developed a gradual protocol I've used successfully with hundreds of families. The first phase involves gradual reduction. Instead of completely eliminating problematic content overnight, you progressively reduce exposure time while introducing healthier alternatives. We begin with visual detox sessions of just 15-20 minutes daily, where the child participates in completely screen-free activities. During these detox sessions, it's crucial to offer activities nurturing the same brain areas that have been overstimulated. Games requiring sequential construction, age-appropriate puzzles, artistic activities involving process over result, and especially time in nature. Nature has a unique restorative effect on the child's nervous system. The fractal patterns of leaves, the sound of running water, the soft visual complexity of a garden, all these elements provide stimulation that is rich but not overwhelming. It's as if nature were the perfect antidote to technological overstimulation. I've seen extraordinary results with what I call progressive attention therapy. We begin with activities requiring only 3 to 5 minutes of sustained attention and gradually increase duration. It could be something as simple as asking the child to completely observe a flower, describing every detail they notice, or listening to a short piece of music with eyes closed, paying attention to each instrument. A crucial element in this process is parents' active participation. Children need to see their reference adults modeling healthy attention behaviors. This means parents must also examine their own media consumption and capacity to be present with their children. I remember the transformative case of the Gonzalez family. When they implemented what we call sacred hours without screens each afternoon, initially there was resistance from both parents and children. But after 3 weeks, they reported their children had begun spontaneously requesting these hours because they'd rediscovered the pleasure of creative play, conversation, and simply being together. A particularly effective strategy is what I call co-creation of media norms. Instead of imposing rules unilaterally, you involve children in age-appropriate conversations about how media affects their bodies and minds. Children are surprisingly receptive when they understand the why behind limits. As a mental health professional, I consider it fundamental that parents know how to recognize when media content impact has crossed the line from normal to something requiring professional intervention. Not all changes in child behavior require therapy, but some specific patterns do demand specialized attention. The most significant warning signs include drastic changes in sleep patterns persisting more than 2 weeks after modifying media consumption. If a child continues having recurring nightmares, insomnia, or night terrors related to content they've seen, this indicates the material has deeply impacted their nervous system and may need therapeutic processing. Another critical sign is the appearance of aggressive or sexualized behaviors inappropriate for the child's normal development. I've seen cases where very young children reproduce behaviors they've observed in inappropriate content without really understanding what they're doing. This requires immediate intervention, not just to protect the child, but to help them process premature exposure to concepts their brain isn't prepared to handle. Severe changes in socialization capacity also merit professional attention. If a child who previously enjoyed cooperative play and social interactions begins isolating, showing aggression toward other children, or developing irrational fears about normal social situations, these may be indicators their emotional programming has been significantly altered. I vividly remember Lucas's case, a 6-year-old who developed what appeared to be severe anxiety disorder after exposure to terror content disguised as child entertainment. His parents initially thought it was just a phase, but when he began having panic attacks in everyday situations, like going to school or being alone in his room, they understood they needed specialized help. A particularly concerning sign is loss of capacity for independent imaginative play. If a child who previously could entertain themselves creatively for age-appropriate periods suddenly needs constant external stimulation and cannot generate their own play, this suggests their natural creativity has been significantly compromised. Changes in appetite and relationship with food can also be related to media overstimulation. I've observed children who develop need to eat while consuming content, or who lose interest in family meals because they require constant visual stimulation to be able to eat. However, I want to reassure parents. Most negative effects of inappropriate media content are reversible with early intervention and consistent changes in the child's environment. The child's brain is extraordinarily resilient, and I've witnessed complete recoveries in children who seemed severely affected. The key is early intervention. The sooner you identify and address these patterns, the easier it will be to restore healthy neurological development. Waiting for problematic behaviors to resolve themselves usually results in them becoming more entrenched and difficult to modify. When seeking professional help, it's important to find a therapist who specifically understands the neurological impact of media content on child development. Not all mental health professionals are updated in this relatively new area of knowledge. Protection against negative impact from inappropriate media content isn't just about restriction. It's about actively creating a family environment, nurturing all dimensions of healthy child development. In my years of practice, I've identified specific elements that the most successful families have in common. The first element is creating what I call sacred spaces of connection. These are moments and places in the home completely free of technology and dedicated exclusively to genuine human interaction. It's not about eliminating all technology from family life, but creating intentional refuges where deep human connection can flourish. One of the most powerful rituals I recommend is instituting device-free family meals, where conversation centers on each family member's real experiences. I've observed that children regularly participating in these meals develop superior communication skills, better emotional regulation, and stronger family bonds. Shared reading is another transformative element. I'm not just referring to bedtime stories, though that's also valuable. I'm talking about creating a family culture where books are valued and where children see their parents reading for pleasure. Children learn more through modeling than instruction. When they see adults finding genuine satisfaction in activities requiring sustained concentration, they internalize that these behaviors are valuable and satisfying. Free, unstructured play is absolutely crucial for healthy neurological development. But many modern families have lost the art of allowing children to be productively bored. Children need regular time where there are no planned activities, no directed external stimuli, and they can simply follow their natural curiosity wherever it leads. During these free play periods, it's normal and healthy for children to experience moments of boredom. Instead of immediately rescuing them with entertainment, allow them to navigate through that initial discomfort toward the creativity that naturally emerges on the other side of boredom. Regular exposure to nature is another non-negotiable component of healthy development. You don't need to live in the countryside for this. Even simple activities like walking in urban parks, observing clouds, or maintaining plants at home can provide connection with natural rhythms that the child's brain needs to develop in a balanced way. I've noticed that families prioritizing outdoor activities have children with better emotional regulation, greater attention capacity, and fewer anxiety-related problems. There's something deeply restorative in nature's complex but harmonious patterns that perfectly counteracts digital media overstimulation. Music plays a special role in healthy neurological development. Not just any music, but especially music requiring active listening. Classical, folk, jazz, or any genre with harmonic and rhythmic complexity. Playing musical instruments is even better, as it integrates multiple brain systems in ways promoting healthy neuroplasticity. An often overlooked aspect is the importance of teaching children practical skills requiring concentration and producing tangible results. Cooking together, gardening, simple construction projects, arts and crafts. All these activities teach the brain that real satisfaction comes from sustained process toward meaningful objectives, not from instant stimulation. I remember the extraordinary transformation of the Martinez family, who implemented what we call screen-free Saturdays. Initially, there was resistance, but gradually these days became the whole family's favorites. Children rediscovered forgotten games. Parents rediscovered the satisfaction of being completely present with their children, and the whole family developed traditions and memories they still value years later. We reach the end of this journey through a topic I'm deeply passionate about because I've seen firsthand both the damage that can be caused and the healing possible when we act with knowledge and intention. What we've explored today isn't just academic theory. It's the result of years of clinical observation and accompanying hundreds of families in real transformation processes. Every case I've shared with you represents not only a child and family's suffering, but also the hope that knowledge can create profound, lasting changes. I want us to reflect together on something fundamental. Our children are growing up in a world that didn't exist when we were children. The challenges they face are unique in human history, and solutions that worked for previous generations won't necessarily be sufficient. Now, this isn't anyone's fault. It's simply the reality of living in an era of accelerated technological transformation. But precisely because we're the first generation navigating these challenges, we have the responsibility and opportunity to create new parenting paradigms that protect the best of human development while consciously and intentionally embracing technological tools that can enrich our lives. The main message I want you to take away today is this: you have more power than you imagine to influence your children's neurological and emotional development. Every decision about what content you allow, every moment of mindful attention you share with them, every loving limit you establish, is literally molding their brain architecture and the foundations of their future well-being. This isn't about creating additional guilt or anxiety in the already complex task of being a parent in the 21st century. It's about empowering you with knowledge so you can make informed decisions aligned with your deepest values about what kind of human beings you want to help form. Changes don't have to be dramatic to be effective. Sometimes the most profound transformations arise from small but consistent adjustments made with clear intention and unconditional love. A little less screen time here, a little more genuine conversation there, regular moments of device-free connection. These small seeds can flourish into extraordinary changes. Remember also that this process is as much for you as for your children. When you create a family environment nurturing presence, creativity, and authentic connection, you also benefit. Many parents report that changes they implemented to protect their children also significantly improved their own quality of life and emotional well-being. If something we've explored today resonates with your experience, if you recognize some of these patterns in your own family, or if you simply feel this information could be valuable for other parents in your community, I invite you to share this knowledge. Significant social change always begins with individual conversations that gradually expand to create new cultural norms. And now, I want to hear from you. After everything we've explored together today, I'd very much like to know, do you recognize some of these patterns in your daily life with your children? Have you noticed changes in their behavior, attention, or emotional regulation that might be related to their media consumption? Or perhaps you've already experimented with reducing certain types of content and observed improvements. I invite you to share your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what another parent needs to hear, to feel less alone in this process, or to find motivation to make changes they've been considering. Sometimes, knowing others have faced similar challenges and found solutions gives us the courage to take that first step toward transformation. I'd also love to know what specific strategies have worked for you, what resistance you've encountered, and what additional resources would be useful for you to continue deepening this topic. Conscious parenting is a path better walked in community, learning from each other and supporting one another in the beautiful and challenging task of guiding our children toward their fullest potential. Thank you for accompanying me in this important reflection. Remember that every moment is a new opportunity to consciously choose how we want to influence the development of these extraordinary human beings we have the privilege of accompanying in their first years of life.